What's up, guys? I wanted to make a quick video for you today on what to do when your ad costs start rising. When your cost per result, whether it's cost per call or cost per application, cost per lead, is starting to rise, and your lead volume or call volume is starting to go down, right? And so one thing I hear all the time is, hey, Nick, we launched ads for the first time 2 weeks ago and our costs were really, really good and the volume was amazing. And now all of a sudden our costs are starting to rise and our volume, we were getting, 8 leads a day a couple weeks ago. And now we're only getting, 3 or 4 a day and it's not coming back down. What do we do? And I want to explain in this video, number one, why that's happening and how to think about why this happens when costs rise, when you launch a campaign and your costs go up, and some things that you can do to mitigate against this and get your costs back down to where they were before, and also to give you some perspective around what to expect with your costs, because sometimes you're never going to get that cost back down to where it initially was when you first launched ads for the first time ever. Okay, so I'm gonna work around this with you for a few minutes here and just explain the concept of this. I'm gonna start by explaining why costs rise in the first place after launching ads. So, and this is especially true when you first launch your ads for the first time ever, and this is the first time you've ever launched ads and they've been shown to the people in your market for the first time ever. Okay. So let's just say for the example of this, you have an offer for real estate agents. And let's say that you have some sort of lead generation service offer. Okay. Your market is real estate agents. And let's say you've never launched ads before. Today, right now is the first time you ever launched ads on Meta. And we're going to use Meta for the example here. When you launch ads, you're going to have an audience. Think of it like an ocean of people that your ads could be served to. Right? This is like the audience on Facebook, for example, on Meta. When you initially launch ads for the first time, let's say you just launch ads at a low amount at $100 a day spend, which that is low, to be clear. At that low of a spend, what you have to understand about Facebook is that Facebook, or Meta, whatever you want to call it, Meta's very, very, very good at predicting who is going to respond to your ads. The reason Facebook/Meta is the best ad platform, especially for beginners, like people that are not going to spend thousands of dollars a day on ad spend, is because it's a really, really good prediction machine. Meaning, based on the words you're saying in your ad and the headline you use and the text you're using as the caption of your ads, Facebook is really good at pinpointing, based on millions of data points that they have on everyone, who is likely to respond to your ad and take the action that you're asking it to take, like booking a call, applying, opting in, purchasing, etc. Okay. For the case of this, we're going to say that we're optimizing the campaigns for booked calls. We're asking Facebook in the settings of the campaign, I want you to produce conversions, meaning booked calls. Okay. Now, when I first launched that campaign at $100 a day in spend, Facebook is going to take all the concepts, the text that's on the landing page, the headline you're using on the ads, the primary text, meaning the captions, all the words you're saying in the video, and it's going to show it mainly to real estate agents. Even though there's going to be plenty of people in this audience, like the actual targeting on Facebook, even if you're using completely broad targeting on Meta, Out of everyone in that audience that you're targeting, Meta is mainly going to show your ads just to real estate agents. So let's say this is like the whole audience technically on Facebook. Let's say that there's a big pocket of people right here that are actually real estate agents. Okay. Your ad's only going to be shown to this group of people. It's not going to be shown to everyone in the audience. It's just not going to happen. Okay. But even within this circle here, Meta's only going to show your ad to like a little tiny sliver of the audience. Like the little dot you can see right there. Okay? And it's because Meta has identified that tiny little sliver is the portion of the real estate agents that are the most easily sold on this right now, on your offer. They're the most likely to respond to your message and inquire about your service or your offer. And that's why they'll get shown your ad first. And by the way, included in that little sliver is usually people that are also in your warm audience base, people that have engaged with you recently on Instagram, people that have engaged with you recently on Facebook, people who have been to your website recently. And by the way, this happens even if you're using completely broad targeting, because Meta is much smarter than you and I. It has all the data on all its users, and it knows who in the audience has already engaged with you and your company. As long as you've had, a Facebook page, an Instagram page, Facebook pixel already like operating. Okay. And because Facebook shows your ads to the people that are most probable to convert at the very beginning, that's why when you're first starting out and you're only spending $100 a day, you start to get really good results if your ad's working at a very low cost. Because there's an untapped small portion of that market that is super susceptible to respond to your offer. They've never seen you before. They never heard your offer before. They never seen your face before, most of them, a lot of them. And so they're very responsive. Think of it like you have a sponge in your hand and it's full of water. Those people in the center of that little dot are like a sponge that's full of water. If you squeeze it just a little bit, squeezing it being like how much you're spending, if you just squeeze it even just a little bit, a bunch of water will start to fall out because it's very full and there's a lot of potential energy. Think of it that way. That's ready to take action once they see your offer. Okay. Now, the reason why your spend is going to start, why people experience diminishing returns or they experience increased costs after the ads have been spending for a few weeks, or especially when they start increasing their spend, is because, quite simply, and if you look at this right here, the campaign, if you start spending $200 a day or $300 a day or $500 a day, Facebook can't just show it to this little tiny sliver anymore. There's not enough people in that pocket to spend $500 a day on. So Facebook has to start going out and out and out and out even further to outer pockets of the audience that are not as easily convertible. Those people did not see your ad at first for a reason, right? They're not as easily convincible, right? They're not as potent of an audience member, okay? And that's exactly why they cost more. They're not as easily convinced to respond, okay? But in order to spend that level of spend, you have to go into those outer, you have to start going a little bit further out into more outer layers of the onion compared to that first initial batch of people. This happens whether at least if you're just launching ads for the first time, this is going to happen whether you increase your spend or not, because after you spent $100 a day, for example, for a couple weeks, you've already shown your ads to that initial portion of people in that very small pocket. So even if you're spending $100 a day and you keep doing that, Facebook at some point has to start going out to outer layers into new buckets of people in the audience that haven't seen your ads yet, because that initial section of people already saw your ads like several times. And so they're no longer So they are no longer the most easily convinced people to respond. Okay, this is the fundamental reason why when you keep spending money on a campaign, your ads will start to fatigue in terms of the volume, and they'll start to become less effective. And especially why it happens when you start to increase your spend on your campaigns. You have to have a really good ad to be able to convert people at a good cost at $1,000 a day and spend on a campaign, because you have to convince people that are in the more outer layers of the onion, so to speak, of the audience, like you see right here. Okay, so this begs the question, okay, well, Nick, what do I do then? Right, like if this is happening, like what do we actually do so that our costs don't go up? The first thing I will say is, number one, if you just launched ads for the first time like 2 weeks ago and your costs have risen, your ads are probably never going to go. In most cases, if you don't, unless you make a radical change to your funnel and your ads, if you keep similar style ads to what you've been running, your ads are probably not going to go back down to the costs that you experienced in the first week. It's just probably not going to happen. Why? Because fundamentally, the market never saw your face before, right? This is obviously assuming that your ad was good, right? Obviously, if your first ad sucked and you outperformed them with way better ads, then obviously your costs could go further down, to be clear. However, if your initial ads were pretty good and you know you're currently operating with your winning ads, then you're probably not going to go back down to the initial cost, because you were just new to the market. You were just brand new to the market. Okay. Now, with that being said, and by the way, that whole concept, I like to call it the honeymoon phase, right? When you first launch ads for the first time, or if you launch a new offer for the first time, you might experience a few days or a week or whatever of like super low costs. You're in the honeymoon phase because it's fresh, the sponge is full, the audience has never seen your offer before, they might have never seen your face before, they've never seen this messaging before. And so I call it the honeymoon phase. It's kind of like if you get married, for example. It's like that feeling when you first get with that person, when you first start dating that person, you're probably never going to feel that same exact feeling again. Right? But that's not what you should be expecting to have a healthy, long relationship, right? You should be expecting much worse feelings to be your everyday feeling versus what you experienced in that honeymoon phase, right? Same thing with this. If your business needs those super low costs that you experience in the honeymoon phase in order to be profitable, well, then you're not going to make it months and months and months. Your business isn't constructed well enough to be able to scale with paid ads, right? Like you're going to have low costs probably in the beginning, and then your costs are going to rise a little bit and go up, and then at some point they're going to plateau. And you're going to start experiencing what normal costs are like for you, and you need to make it so that your business is able to sustain at that plateau level that you will start to experience after you've been running ads for like a month, for example, or 2 months, for example, or 2 weeks, for example, after you initially launch ads for the first time for your business or for a specific new offer that you're running. Okay. You can't build your business around what those costs were in the honeymoon phase, because you're not going to get back to those costs most likely. In most cases. There are exceptions, but in most cases. Now, for those of you who have already been running ads for a while, and let's say this is your costs and this is time. If you have already, experienced that honeymoon phase and you've come up here and you've plateaued with your costs, if that's you, and now you're experiencing rising costs, now what I'm about to say is what to do if that's you. right? Like you're already like sophisticated, you've already been running ads for a long time, blah blah blah, and your ads were doing well, and now they're starting to, you've launched a certain set of ads that are working, and now the ad costs are starting to inflate, right? Which is fundamentally, that's called ad fatigue, right? Which most of you will have heard of that before. So what do? There's a few things you do. Number one, if you're experiencing ad fatigue, the first thing you want to do is you want to understand that you need to create new variations of those winning ad concepts, right? Variations are simply like a new outfit, a new location, a new style. So instead of me doing a video at my desk here with this background, I might do a selfie style video walking, or a selfie style video in my car, right? Those are like examples of different style ads. Or I might have a female record the same ad, or someone in a suit, or an Asian person versus a white person, or an African American person, or a different race person, or a different gender, right? Or even different personalities. So these are different variations of an ad concept, right? Another example of variations are just different variations of hooks, like a different way of opening the opening line of the ad can be different. Like the way you emphasize the words could be different. The literal words you say could be slightly different, right? Those are examples of variations. Or you could say the same thing, but like on a recorded video where you're in the bottom right corner of your screen, like a Loom video style ad. That's another variation, right? That's the first thing you want to do. Once you know like what ad concepts are working for you, when you experience ad fatigue, you want to record like 10, 20 new variations of that winning concept and launch those new variations. And what you will typically see when you launch new variations is your cost might be here after they've risen. And let's say your typical costs are like down here. Once you launch those new variations of those ads, your costs will typically trend back down to here, back to your normal, your typical range, or closer to it. And then after you start to experience ad fatigue, you're going to start seeing increased costs again at some point, where you would do the same thing again with more variations, different faces, different styles, different hook variations, etc., all around the same ad concept. Like you're saying the same fundamental ad angle, the same fundamental message, but just new variations. That's the first thing. Okay, and you're just you're giving the algorithm more variations to penetrate more micro pockets of the audience with this. Okay, the second thing, which is an even bigger needle mover, is totally new ad concepts, like completely new ad concepts. So this is the safer route, the more variations, because these ad concepts already work. But the one that is a bigger needle mover is coming up with new winning ad concepts completely. Why? Because new ad concepts penetrate at an even more effective level different pockets of the audience. Meaning, like you're touching on different people's pain points in the market, different desires in the market, different things they're worried about, different things that they might be thinking about, right? So if you were talking about this pain point over here in your initial winning ads, if you talk about a totally different pain point associated with the same problem, like a totally different pain point, that ad concept is going to resonate with a whole different subset of your target market, right? And that's how you renew with new messaging. You hit people from a different angle, or you hit totally different people in the market in general. Okay, so there's new variations, and there's new ad angles, ad concepts in general. And some of them won't work, and some of them will work. But that's how you find new ad angles that work, is totally new concepts. And the more you scale, the more ad creatives you're going to need to do on a weekly, bi-weekly basis in terms of how many new ad variations and how many new ad concepts you are launching as tests, right? So if we draw this as a graph, this is the level of scale, how much we're spending on ads in a day. Like this is daily spend. And this is how many ad creatives. This is like volume of ads that you're testing on a biweekly or weekly basis, or monthly basis if you're at a little bit lower of a spend. The more they have a direct correlation. The higher amount of spend you're spending, the more ads you need to test. And by the way, the smaller your market is, so like if you have a B2B offer, the smaller your market is, the harder it is to increase your spend, and the more variations and ad concepts you need to launch, because there's less people in the market in general. So the bigger the market size, the less ads you actually need to test based on how much you're spending, right? So the graph would look like this. So if you have a much bigger market, you don't need to test as many ads because the market is just so much bigger, right? This is why typically the people that are spending the most on ads, the people that can scale ad spend the furthest, they're typically like really big B2C type offers, right? And by the way, this is fundamentally why, if you want to scale just as far and you have a B2B offer, you need to have a high LTV to offset the fact that you cannot scale your ad spend as far as people with B2C offers, right? So your return on spend in terms of your cost of acquiring a customer compared to your LTV, if you're a B2B offer, if you want to scale very far, your LTV needs to be very high because your market is typically going to be smaller in comparison to B2C. Like for example, if you sell to dentists, right? Compare that to selling to parents who have like some sort of like parental problem that needs solved, right? Parents are obviously a much bigger audience. So if I'm targeting them and I'm spending $5,000 a day, I can get away with testing less compared to if I'm selling to the dentists. I'm gonna have to test a lot more variations. I'm gonna have to launch a lot more variations, a lot more ad concepts or ad angles in a given month or in whatever time frame, comparing the two, because the market is just a lot smaller. There might be like, if I'm targeting US and Canada, there might be like, I don't know, like 1 million dentists or like 500,000 dentists or whatever the number is. How many parents are in the US and Canada? Like a shitload, like way more than that, right? And so these are some concepts that you need to think about based on market size and how to actually scale spend by also scaling your ad creative volume and the velocity of getting new creatives launched. And so at scale, at small scale, your ad penetration of the market will look something like this, right? You have a big circle, and this might be like the actual people that make sense for Facebook to show your ads to, and you might, if you have like two ads that are running, like two different ad concepts, you might be like penetrating this section and this little section, right? At scale, if you still only target those real estate agents, for example, then you might have like 10 or more ad concepts running and many variations of each. It might look more like this, right? Like you're covering much more of the board like this in comparison, because you have many more ad creatives out there that resonate with different pockets of the audience. Obviously, this is at much higher levels of spend. just like that in comparison. Okay. So I hope this makes sense. This is kind of the explanation of why your ad costs will increase if you increase your spend, or if you just spend over a long enough period of time, you're going to experience ad fatigue. And this is essentially why most people struggle with this, and this is the cause and effect of it. And these are essentially how you get around it. And at some point, you're not going to be able to scale spend past a certain point, because there's not enough people in the market to convert at a good enough cost. So at that point, you either need to move into a new market, or you need to innovate the system entirely to get the baseline cost to be much lower so that you can scale further, right? Or like, for example, if you have a call funnel that's running and you're doing like $1 million a month or something, right? And you keep hitting a ceiling, right? That's when you might layer in a low ticket self-liquidating funnel, right? So that your net CPA is lower, so you can scale further and acquire more of the market share with your ads. So anyway, hope this makes sense. If you have any questions on this, feel free to reach out. I know this is quite technical, but or this can be maybe slightly confusing, but once you do it for a while, you'll understand exactly what I'm saying. Once you've practiced and actually implemented this over and over again. So anyway, let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you guys in the next video.